All right. Hello, everyone. So, thank you for that intro, Erica. I am so excited for our next session, the CX Eras Mini Tour. So, for those of us who are Swifties, the Eras Tour was a way for this artist, Taylor Swift, you might have heard of her, to look back at her different eras and then to give that era time and space to be flushed out and to bring up the things that made her stronger. And so for the CX Eras tour that we're going to do, we have three amazing guests who are going to share a little bit about their backstory, the often non-linear path that we all take to end up in the CX space, and the nuggets that I said nuggets again, to end up in the leadership spaces that they are at today. So, without further ado, I will have each of our panelists give a little introduction and then we will dig into this exciting era's topic. So, TJ, I'll pass it off to you.
Sure. Thank you, Kathleen. Thanks everybody for coming today. I feel like that's a hard act to follow, by the way. That was such a good start for the day. But my name is TJ Stein. I'm head of customer care at Ipsy. For those that are unfamiliar, we offer a suite of beauty subscriptions that helps sort of unite brands, creators, and consumers all together through one single platform. So as head of customer care, I help oversee our contact centers, service experience, and AI and automation programs. I just joined about a year ago, and I'm joining you all from St. Augustine, Florida. I'll kick it over to Luis.
Thank you, DJ. Good morning, afternoon, night, whatever everybody is at. My name is Luis Carillo, and if you cannot hear me, it's because I have internet issues and I cannot control that. So I'm not going to worry about it. I
You sound great.
about 20 years in multiple industries. TJ, when I was a couple years ago, and I've been on the operations side and on the technology side, and it's great to be here with everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Luis. And Ethan, are you able to hear us and jump on? All right. Well, I will go ahead and do a brief introduction for Ethan, and hopefully we'll be able to navigate some tech things and bring him on to join the conversation. So, Ethan Peters is a senior insurance product and technology leader with a proven track record of delivering measurable business outcomes through strong program ownership, operational excellence, and people first leadership. He's currently serving as the senior director of auto product management, program delivery, and enhancements at Liberty Mutual Insurance. He leads a team of about 50 analysts, managers, and directors responsible for preparing and delivering auto product program updates nationwide. So, Ethan, hopefully we'll get you on here soon and we can jump into our session. So, my name is Kathleen Spearman. I am the Director of Strategic Growth here at Instant Teams. And in preparing for this session, what made it so exciting for me was that I personally took a pivot, a career pivot. So I started off in the social work world and have pivoted over to the CX and community building world. And so I am excited to jump into each person's story. Every CX leader started somewhere else. That is a trend that I have seen talking to many CX leaders over the years. And I would love to hear each of your opening acts. What, was the job that you started at and how it led you into the customer experience space. So, TJ, I will kick it back over to you.
Yeah, sure. When I attended Flagler College here in St. Augustine, and I had wanted some cash during weekends and after classes. I worked at a private golf course here in town called Marsh Creek, and I'm not a golfer, but I needed some work and I needed some cash, and basically required me to really understand like the service experience from a really like ground floor level, meaning, you're essentially like taking care of these folks, their day, making sure that they're, comfortable, and you got to know their names, you got to know their preferences and all that kind of stuff. And those sort of formative experiences, sort of early on in life kind of helped formulate my interest in understanding the service experience as a whole. And those experiences really served me well long term when I led other people that had to do those things, whether it's in a call center environment, taking escalations in a brick and mortar store. All those things really helped, bring a lot more clarity to my role and my focus. But I obviously, I still don't play golf, but I think back to those times really fondly. I met my wife there. So like, there's a lot of like really great things that came about from those experiences, even though it was extremely hard. But obviously, I've since sort of moved on from the golf world and settled into some other areas since then. But it's certainly served me well.
Well, goodness, the golf course, I feel like that is a trial by fire for customer experience. So I also love that you mentioned the different areas being brick and mortar and virtual, and that customer experience is all over the place, and you got to have those different experiences with different adaptations. Luis, I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you. And I was, drawing parallels with TJ as well. I also met my wife in my first job, so it's kind of interesting. But I started as a credit risk analyst. Believe it or not, nothing has to do with customer experience. Back in the early 2000s, I was actually wanted. My plan was going to be I was going to be an FP&A, into FP&A leadership and into some place. But I was deep into the numbers. I was, forecasting risk. I was analyzing trends and building models. And that was the plan. And I really liked the logic of it. It all made sense until later on. I'm going to share, something that happened within the first 6 months that made me kind of pivot to customer service at the time, and it was probably for the best, but nothing to do with customer experience. As a matter of fact, I was so siloed for the first 6 months. It's pretty interesting.
Wonderful. Thank you, Louise. That's amazing that you both met your wife in your first job. What an interesting parallel to have. So wonderful and happy for you both. So, what was that moment or that decision where you moved from that first job into more of a traditional customer experience position? I don't know if traditional is even the right word, but what brought you into CX as an industry?
I'll jump
Um,
in, or you want to go first, Luis?
I, for change of pace, that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Sure. I was probably it was probably when I was a trainer. So after about 6 months in the finance division, there was a trainer opportunity for me, where I had to, kind of developing curriculum, which was probably the least part of the role itself. I was not a trainer, but I was asked to develop training curriculum for like risk prevention analysts. And I thought I was just helping out, to be honest with you. What I discovered was, through the journey, was that I enjoy the coaching aspect of people more than the building the curriculum itself and building like spreadsheets and things like that. So that actually really surprised me because I was so siloed. And then I was starting to help people through the journey of becoming a credit risk analyst. So definitely that was a big shift into wanting to help out more people, wanted to be more of a people leader, not necessarily on the CX side of it, but just in general. So that really sparked my curiosity. So now I think back into the training aspect of it, and being a trainer was a painful experience at the time, but now that I look at it, it was probably the best thing that happened to me.
I love that. So the training was the big skill set that became your customer experience, secret weapon, if you will. That was what led you into that pathway. I love that.
Correct.
Thank you,
Yep.
Louise. Let's take a pause, and Ethan, if you want to do a quick intro and share, your first role that was before you were in more of that customer experience lens. So yeah, I'll let you take it away. I'm glad you're able to join us. And I'm glad that you have some guitars in the background for our mini Eras tour.
I bought those just for today. So can you hear me this time?
Yes, I can hear you. And I love the enthusiasm.
All right. I appreciate it. And sorry for the technical issues. It said that I was in there. It said everything was working. So
All right.
I'm probably like the least traditional path into CX. I started actually in the Air Force. I spent 23 years in the Air Force. And I worked in satellite and wideband communications maintenance. And so that was a very non-customer experience oriented field. And I think what I learned and what like kind of led me to the space was that no matter what you're doing, experience is what people remember when our systems fail. And whether that's the system that our people are using or the systems that our customers are using, what they're going to remember is what they felt like when they tried to interact with whatever it is that we're providing for them. And so that's kind of how I started learning and building as I came up through traditional IT later on. And then when I joined Progressive Insurance in a more traditional CX experience. So really happy to be here and appreciate the time.
I think that sentence is such an important takeaway. No matter what you're doing, what people will remember is the experience, how they felt. Even if the outcome is good, no matter what, the experience that they had going through a process, and that's what people remember. So I love that. Starting off with a really important piece there. So TJ, I will pass it back over to you with the question on what was that moment or that decision that moved you from role one, I'm assuming in this case your golf course experience, into more of customer experience as an industry.
Yeah, certainly. And I'll maybe highlight one particular jump from my first sort of like support function role to a more broader CX role. But I spent about 8 years at a company, like a fast growing tech startup in Culver City. And it was a very like call center oriented role, meaning it was very SLA heavy. You were driven by KPIs, and it was all about running, operationally speaking, running it very lean and efficient. And so that's where I sort of got my start in terms of understanding the dynamics of just servicing customers at a really high level. When I left to join like a small direct consumer startup, I had to become a lot more familiar with, growth and acquisition marketing and retention. And my sort of lens for how I viewed, I guess, customers and customer acquisition and lifetime value changed pretty dramatically. And so, whereas I was very narrow in my focus, it became a lot more broad in terms of how I think about, the types of customers that we acquire, how we deliver really exceptional service experiences to them. So while my operational capacity shifted maybe and was minimized, my scope in terms of like learning and understanding of what a really differentiated customer experience is like was just profoundly different. So I shared this earlier, but when I made that leap, that I was leaving a publicly traded company, thousands of employees, and I remember calling my general manager. And he asked, "Well, where are you going?" He's like, "We're really disappointed. Let me know if we can retain you." I said, "Look, I'm ready to move on, but I'm going to MeUndies." And he said, "What?" I said, "Yeah. It's an underwear subscription company, and I really believe in what they're doing." He was like, "You're absolutely crazy." So it was definitely a big leap for me from a professional standpoint, but one that I obviously look back to and think, very fondly about.
I love the taking a risk and leaning into that leadership side too. I think your story really lends itself to that upward mobility in the customer experience space, and how the work, while you said operationally decreased a little bit, the scope of how you had to think about customer experience really grew and really stretched your mind, which is a great personal growth thing as well. And so, related to these answers, this nonlinear path that many of us take, all of us, I think, to customer experience, often can actually provide a lot of customer experience skills, makes you better at your delivery, your leadership in the customer experience space. So, how does this nonlinear path for each of you make you better at leading CX today? Ethan, I'll kick it to you to start us off with this one.
Thanks, Kathleen. So I think there's a couple things here. I think first, coming from like a really operational background, I found that like in ops, you learn to like measure what matters and like try to run reliable systems. And that translates really well into like consistent CX, right? It's not about like getting it right occasionally or about just like the superstars who are really good at providing that experience. It's about measuring whether or not you're making a difference in the systems that you're doing are helping promote quality CX. And so that was kind of like a key for me and has really helped me as I've moved forward.
I love that. Thank you. And Luis, what about you? How does your nonlinear path make you better at leading CX today?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I was thinking about this a lot last couple of days. For me, being like so data driven and like seeing a lot of numbers, it really allows me to operate like in both rooms on the customer experience side, but also understanding how that can translate with the C level and and how impactful any decision that we make on the CX impacts not only the revenue side, but the retention side as well. So I can see it with executives and talk anything from cost per contact, margin impact, and performance modeling. But I can also empathize with the frontline agents and understand what it feels like when things really hit the CX side of it, and the frustration from the customer side of it, and even even when we get super inundated with volume, which there's a lot of nuances in customer experience, right? And a lot of that cannot be translated up to the C level suite at times. So being a numbers guy, to me, it's it has provided me credibility over the years. But being a people person gives me that perspective, right? So for me, combining both um, lets me lead to a more balanced decision, not just looking at the numbers, right? Because the numbers are the numbers, but looking also at the humanity at the same time, which is critical in CX. Because if you lean too far into one another, then or to one, then you lose the other one in the perspective. So yeah.
Absolutely. That really speaks to me as coming from a social worker background. And I speak to so many people that are in customer experience roles who have that helper mindset. They want to solve problems, they want to be a helper, a support person. And you can be that in the leadership perspective as well. And of course, numbers are important. You have to bring that into the equation, but keeping that people first kind of mindset is really helpful. TJ, so how do you believe your nonlinear path makes you better at leading CX today?
Yeah, it's I resonate with both what Luis and Ethan shared. I will say from like a really personal level, it's really humbled me. In terms of my path not being just this neat progression of successes and wins. There's been some misses and some strikeouts along the way that I've similar to the first thing I shared is that I've carried those experiences with me and not used it as some sort of like fuel, but really to help improve the situation, whatever I'm in. And I think, in a couple of opportunities that I've had, those experiences, becoming more well-rounded, your peers and leaders across the company can often look at you when you have those types of experiences as like glue, right? Let's call TJ, let's bring him in and get his perspective. And I think, when we talk about leadership roles, we often talk about influence and understanding your peers and your leaders' currency and what they speak in, and being able to like confidently help them navigate their own challenges through your own experiences is really impactful. So I try to carry those things with me and use it to improve whatever situation I'm in. And then one sort of final note that I think has been really helpful in terms of that nonlinear path is that, a lot of us started in these sort of like entry level roles, whether you're in the trenches. I had a headset on for the first couple of years that I joined that tech startup, and being able to context switch at a really high level, meaning, even this morning, I'm looking at a single customer case. And then later today, we're going to have a conversation about like a 2 to 3 year roadmap. And you got to be able to zoom in and zoom out without breaking a sweat. And I love that, frankly. I mean, if I were just to stay in one level, I'd probably get very bored. But I think customer experience, especially in again, this nonlinear path, has allowed all of us to sort of like get deep into, a specific topic or customer issue, and then also talk more broadly about how technology influences our customers, how, these like big, meaty topics drive what we do. So I love it. Honestly, I probably wouldn't have it any other way.
I think context switching as a leadership skill is a whole topic to get into. I think that's a really big takeaway. And even in planning your day and planning your week. And I think that's a really interesting piece that in customer experience in particular comes up a lot. Like you said, a particular customer concern versus theoretical big changes. I think that's huge. So I do have a few lightning round questions to end, and we can do a few of these and then leave some time for questions too. But just some quick answers. What do you think is the most underrated CX skill? Ethan, I'll kick it to you first.
I think that like the most important thing to me to remember a lot of times is just when you think about CX, think about employee experience as well, because I think like employee experience is a CX strategy, right? Like we can't expect our folks to provide good customer experience if we're not providing a good employee experience. So getting really good at making sure that your employees have the right tools, I think is a really strong strategy for strong CX.
Employee experience is a CX strategy. Boom. I love that. TJ, what about you? Most underrated CX skill?
I'll just speak candidly for myself. Adaptability. When I join a new role or new company, I don't bring the same playbook to every function that I pursue. So if you're stuck in a framework or a playbook and it's not working, move on, change, and adapt.
That's excellent. And in leadership and on the front lines, adaptability is huge.
100%.
Luis, what about you? The most underrated CX skill?
Yeah, I think it goes hand in hand to what TJ was saying, but I would probably say active listening and really listening with intent. Because in a lot of ways, we just listen so that we can respond back. And the best ones listen to really understand what's kind of underneath, either the frustration at the employee level or the customer level, and try to provide and be solution oriented to what they're saying, and not just to be able to respond. So to me, active listening is so underrated at this point.
Agreed. Active listening, again, rings really true for me with my mental health background. It's important as a therapist and it's important as a leader and as somebody on the front lines dealing with a frustrated customer. It's really, really key. Well, let's do one more rapid fire question. We are hitting close to time. If someone feels stuck outside of CX, what should they do this year?
Okay, I went first last time, so
Luis, why don't you
Yeah.
take this one?
There you go.
Sure. It's a really interesting question, especially with the AI era and the
Mhm.
technology side of it. But I want to pivot to a non-traditional tech answer. To me, it's just raising your hands for cross-functional projects that touches the customer, right? Like really, really volunteer to analyze anything, call data, like, shadow support, offer to improve a process. So really challenge yourself to be out of your comfort zone,
Mm,
because that's where, in my opinion, that's where you grow the most. Take that stretch project, be able to, you know, own it. So, for me, CX leaders are built through really exposure and ownerships, and not necessarily titles, and things like that. So just raise your hand, say I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to change it up a little bit. To TJ's point, I mean, if you do the same thing over and over again, I get bored, and
yeah.
just I want to learn something new, right? So raise your hands.
I was called out in the chat that how is this a lightning question? That's fair. So TJ, see if you can give us a quick answer, Ethan, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I'll be quick, and I'll also just kind of echo Luis's point. I've often encouraged folks that we'll have one-on-ones like, hey TJ, I'm feeling a little stuck in my career development. I want to figure something out. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I think in a lot of the small, especially in the smaller companies that I've joined, there's always voids to fill. There's always something that's broken or needs to be fixed or improved. So I always encourage them to think about what bothers them day to day and what things that they think that they could really improve on their own, and we can work together and figure out, how do we improve this thing? How do we make it better? And not only does it improve this thing A to B or something, but it also allows them to build relationships across the company. They demonstrate competency. And maybe more importantly, like they find confidence in themselves. Like, I'm not just here to check a box, but I can solve real business challenges. And that's that confidence they can take with them wherever. So yeah, fill that void.
Fill that void, take on that stretch project. Ethan, you ready to wrap it up for us?
I'm ready. I think TJ said something there that like hits home with me, is that like find something and fix it is kind of like how I approach anything. If you're trying to like find a new place or find a new way to do something, I just say pick one journey that you touch, something that you have some influence over, and then work to reduce effort or to make it better in some way by like 20% or whatever your metric happens to be. Think about like, can you just do fewer handoffs or fewer clicks or fewer follow-ups and whatever that workflow is. And that's CX. Like in the end, that's what it's about, is just making things easier and better for everybody. So that's a great way to like build skills that will make you marketable in the CX space later.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. Well, thank you, Luis, TJ, and Ethan. I think to sum it up, there is no single path into CX, and where you come from, where you started in a different role in a different industry, can have huge tangible impacts on your CX trajectory, and especially in becoming a leader in the CX space. And so I really appreciate hearing each of your backgrounds and what led you here and what nuggets that you brought with you along your way to becoming the leader you are today. So thank you, everyone. We do have our next session coming up, and this is going to be, let's see, let me pull up my run of the day. Oh my goodness, where did it go?
Oh, I'm your run of the day. Hello.
Thank you, run of the day. You're
Oh,
saving
come on,
today.
Kathleen.
Natalie Perez is up next. Thank you for jumping on here, Nate.
Thank you, Kathleen.